Crime under Josh Shapiro has gone up 37%. The murder rate, the homicides, have gone from 277 back in 2016 to just under 600 last year. They don't want to talk about the fact that racism is being taught in our schools. They are raising our kids to hate each other based off your skin color. They don't want to talk about cancel culture and about taking your First Amendment rights. They don't want to talk about the mandates in COVID and the shutdown. They want us to forget that. All executive orders and restrictions that destroy businesses and infringe on your freedoms will end on day one. I will have the backs of our men and women in uniform, our first responders and police and law enforcement. And under Mastriano, we will ensure that Pennsylvania elections are free and fair.
Faith, family, and freedom. That is what Doug Mastriano stands for. That was from his new campaign ad. Very well done. As we know, if you run on these values, you are an enemy to the state, to the entire leftist regime and the mainstream media included. Which is why we are seeing articles like this from Bloomberg. Doug Mastriano bizarrely pledged to ban pole dancing from schools if he's elected governor of Pennsylvania. Is this supposed to be a hit piece? I love it. I love that. Absolutely. We also have this one from his opponent, Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania's current attorney general. Shapiro says, quote, "Here's what you should know about Doug Mastriano. He's an insurrectionist. He's a conspiracy theorist. He wants to ban abortion with no exceptions. He supports conversion therapy. He wants to undermine the union way of life." Well, I'll tell you what, coming from Josh Shapiro, his opponent, that makes me like him even more, and he's with me now. Doug Mastriano, candidate for Pennsylvania governor. An honor to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you for having me on. Napoleon once said, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. So thank you, Josh.
Yes, a compliment coming from him. You're running on faith, family, freedom, something that shouldn't be controversial, Mr. Mastriano, but unfortunately it is all too controversial. And we see it not just in America, but in places like Italy, where Giorgia Meloni essentially ran on the same thing. The entire media blob here in America was labeling her a fascist, and they've labeled you the same.
They need to come up with better pejoratives than the same old, then throw in supremacist or something else out there. And it's like, just shut up. Come on, really. Right. So these are the basic core values that Democrats believe in, independents and Republicans believe in. This is why we're seeing a break in Pennsylvania. Over half of Latinos breaking for me. That's why we're seeing more than half of the independents breaking for me. That's why we're seeing so many Democrats in Pennsylvania factually fleeing the Democrat Party. Just a few years ago, they had a 2 million advantage in registration. Now it's down around 400,000. They're bleeding memberships. The party has left the people behind.
Yeah, they absolutely have. And the midterms are in just a few weeks. I would say, I looked at the polling a bit this morning, and the polling's looking pretty good for you. It seems like Pennsylvanians have an appetite for someone who actually cares about them.
Yeah, imagine that. Somebody who served this country, unlike my opponent. I think his worst sacrifice was one time he had burnt avocado toast at the country club. But, I'm no hero, but I served with heroes across the world. Most of those heroes didn't come home with us, sadly, in combat zones. Could have ridden off to the sunset Addison, like most retired colonels do with top secret access here, but couldn't do it. I want to leave the country a little bit better off than how I got it from my dad's generation for your generation. So our job's not done. Everything's at stake. Sadly, Addison, the Democrats understand how important Pennsylvania is. Unfortunately, many of the establishment folks on the Republican side here, they want to pick and choose people, I guess, that are more for their appetite or more traditional politicians or what have you. But if we get it wrong in Pennsylvania, I do believe we lose our country, because we are the Keystone State. This is where the nation was birthed. We have the potential with the energy reserves God has blessed us with to turn this country out of its reliance on foreign oil and gas. And so under Mastriano on day one, we're going to drill and dig. We're going to open up our energy sector here, bring wealth and prosperity to Pennsylvania, and hopefully make the world safer.
Well, and Doug, you represent a new breed of right-wing candidates who, Republicans used to run on platforms that were just strictly seemed to be about cutting the marginal tax rate. Vote for me and I'm going to bring your tax rate down 1 or 2%. But we're seeing candidates like you and Carrie Lake and people across the country running for Congress and for the United States Senate who are leaning into the issues of education, who are leaning into the issues of energy independence and dealing with crime, and especially education is something that's really popular with parents, because we're seeing this, the fruits of the sexual revolution and the cultural revolution rear its ugly head, and parents don't want to drop their kid off at school and worry that they're going to pick up their son with a wig calling himself Jane.
And that's the problem. And my opponent stands on the wrong side of history. He does not believe in parental rights. He believes that your kids can go in and play pronoun games. So on day one, pronoun games are over under Governor Mastriano. The parents will decide how they raise their kids and not to be indoctrinated in schools. The schools, it should be a choice for the parents where they send their kids. It should not be, here's your zip code, you're condemned to that school, no matter how good or bad it is. 88% of parents in Philadelphia agree with me, and they stand against Josh Shapiro, who's not for school choice at all. We have so many people dying in Philadelphia. It's on a record track of 600, and that's like over 1,000 people, wounded in the action. The grave diggers can't keep up with those being killed, many in a crossfire, between 15 and 18 years old. And much of this is because of the ridiculous policies in Democrat-run Philadelphia, where they shut down the school, they mask up the kids, and many of these kids just said, forget this, I'm not going to bother with this, not being educated anyway. And so it's time to put the power in the parents' hands. In any theory or lesson that teaches kids to hate each other, that's done on day one under Mastriano. So I like to say on day one, woke is broke. We're going to bring common sense, reason back. Parental choice will be renewed in Pennsylvania under Mastriano. And the goal is one single word for all Pennsylvanians under Mastriano: freedom.
Yeah, and obviously for parents, that would be the freedom to be able to send their kids to a school where they're not worried about their teachers transing them, and freedom from worrying about their kids getting shot in the streets or them getting carjacked.
Yes.
Crime's another big issue in the state of Pennsylvania. I know in Philadelphia, carjackings reached 1,000 in a year for the first time. Yep. And this is as we have candidates like John Fetterman who are running on this soft on crime. I'm going to let all the murderers out of prison. I'm going to let legalize all narcotics. So crime is really something at stake in the Pennsylvania Senate and for governor. And I know you have this crazy idea that criminals should stay in prison.
Yeah, imagine you do the crime, you do the time. And the irony is not lost on me and others, is that actually my opponent is 6 years the Attorney General. He's the current Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania. So that means he's a senior law enforcement official. And on his watch, homicides have more than doubled. On his watch, we're the 12th highest homicides nationwide. On his watch, we're the 4th highest in fentanyl deaths. And sex trafficking is going on in our cities. Local girls, mostly girls, sometimes boys, trafficking from other countries, being tortured for years in basements and in homes in our little towns. We know this for a fact. And he's done nothing except turn his back on the people, the state, and look for his own little personal ambitions. It's so bad, Addison, that Shapiro sued my opponent. He sued to keep the kids in Mass last year. He sued Virginia and Florida to let boys in the girls' bathroom. We know what happened this time last year. In Virginia, a young girl was raped in Loudoun County. The school board tried to cover it up. The dad was upset, and he got arrested. Are you kidding me? My opponent even sued to keep business shut down and went so far over a religious issue. I thought the left was supposed to be tolerant. Oh, only if you agree with them. He sued the Little Sisters of the Poor. I mean, who sues nuns? And he took them to the Supreme Court and lost, thank God. But this guy is the antithesis of freedom. We have to say no to Josh. He's incompetent. He's failed us completely as the Attorney General, and we have to win in Pennsylvania on 8 November.
Say no to Shapiro. Doug Mastriano sounds like a great choice for Pennsylvania. Really appreciate you joining the show and for taking a stand against this madness. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. God bless you, brother.
Likewise.